Good morning. So, my name is Corbett, and I used to play piano for ballerinas for a living. I didn't know what a truss or a plenum was. I didn't know anything about roof decks. And being a new person in this field, I've only been doing this since 2008, gives me a kind of a strength that's actually one of my superpowers. So I'd like to give this to all of you. Everyone raise your right hand. Repeat after me. Sometimes I am an idiot. Good, yes, it feels good, doesn't it? It's very freeing because that's one of the things that I'm perfectly willing to do every day is look like an idiot, because I am an idiot. It's okay, I'm a new guy. So I was asking all these dumb questions about buildings, and if you've been to some of the building sessions here, you'll hear about buildings having big problems, and of course the property manager or the guy who's in charge of the facilities doesn't understand how things are supposed to work, and I think that is a systemic problem. Nobody really understands how buildings are supposed to work. So we need to be talking about this more. In fact, I'm really happy that Gary put this keynote under the condition monitoring heading, because I think that that is really what I'm talking about. When I talk about buildings, I'm not talking about what most of us talk about. And the way that I'd like to demonstrate this to you is with my house. So this is a house that I designed and built with my family. My mom and dad helped me every night. They work full-time, and then they'd come home at night. We lived at their house for 5 months with our 2 cats, and we had a baby in the middle of all that. It took 5 months, 7 days a week. I've never built a house before. And what I do when we travel around to 20 cities this year, we're parked in San Francisco right now. It's the 15th city of 20. And I will stand up in front of normal people and tell them when they come to see my house, because everybody wants to see a tiny house, right? They'll come to me and say, we'd like to see inside your house. And I'll say, great, I want you to make sure that you get what this is really about, though. This house is the best performing tiny house on wheels in the world. And in every state, I say, this is the highest performance house in your entire state. And you can bring any builder to the table with me, and we can have this argument, and I will always win the argument because I am the only one who has actual metric measured information about what is going on inside the house. And that's what all of you are experts in. If we use infrared, it's very easy to transition and start using pressure testing and understand flows, because if you understand how heat flow and capacitance and transmission and emissivity works, you're already smarter than most people who are out there working every day. And coming from music, I realized that like 80% of everyone is not paying attention to what they're doing, and that includes opera composers and professional musicians and doctors and builders and contractors and homeowners for that matter too. So we need to be out there talking about this stuff because we're the ones who actually have the power to do that. So when I say this is the highest performance house in your state right now, and no one can argue with me because I will always win. I have more metric information. We'll talk about what that means exactly. But essentially what I'm trying to do is teach them to control their air quality. And air quality-wise, I have 2 cats, I have a baby, and I have a composting toilet. So what that means is when people come into my home and they can see that we actually live there, we end up talking about poop and why my house doesn't smell like poop, because it's 210 square feet. So this is a fun exercise to be able to have these kind of conversations with people where they have some kind of, like maybe they have cats and they can smell what in their house? Kitty litter. Gross, right? It's, even though it doesn't necessarily smell as bad as poop does, it's important to have these conversations because people have all kinds of problems they don't want to talk about, and they get used to things in their homes because this is where we adapt and, oh, I sleep with 30 blankets on me for the last 30 years. It's fine. That's what houses do. The myth is that houses have problems, and it's not true. I am a total idiot, and I built a house that outperforms essentially every home that has been built in Las Vegas, and I'll say that in California, etc. So when we do this, I'd like everybody to repeat after me. The home is a system. My home is a system. Good. Say that to yourself all the time. And have your clients, if you work in buildings, or if you have mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and friends, have them know this too, because we are trained to think that every home is just a collection of boxes that we buy at the store and bring home and plug in, and it makes things better. My house stinks like kitty litter, for example. I'm going to bring home an air filtration device, and I'm going to plug it in, and I'm going to be like, oh yeah, this is going to fix everything. Really, these are all Band-Aids, because the home is a system. Now, we understand this viscerally and logically in a truck. And that's my truck that's pulling my house. My house weighs 13,000 pounds. Is the truck a system? Great. It's a system of interdependent and interrelating parts. What are the systems that make up the truck? Electrical, brakes, hydraulics, fuel, blah, 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 blah. Right, we get it. Would you allow your mother to go to a mechanic and say, my engine's making a funny noise. Please replace my engine. No. Thank you for being honest. Yes. Good. That's totally ridiculous. Now, the person who's driving that truck is the person's body, a system made up of subsystems. Clearly, what are the subsystems that make up a person's body? You guys are so shy. Good, yes, okay. All of this, did you say intake and outtake? I like that, that's good. Okay, so the body is a system. Would you allow your mother to walk into a doctor's office and say, my stomach hurts, please take out my appendix? And yet, all of us have been making mistakes for years. We have our spouses or our family or our neighbors going to somebody who sells windows and saying, my house is uncomfortable. Will you please replace all my windows? Or, my house is uncomfortable. Or, I have funny smells. Will you please add more insulation to my attic? Or, will you give me a higher efficiency air conditioner or furnace? All four of those things are a total waste of money and time and energy. Let's stop doing them altogether because you can't know anything unless you have this stuff. Now, we can talk about the fact that infrared cameras have this resolution and this many pixels, and we can talk about blower doors and how many CFM they can use and how much this stuff costs and the flow grids and the pressure gauges, et cetera, et cetera. But really, all of this stuff that I use in my daily work, and all I do is test houses. And by the way, also, all I do is test houses in the private market. I do not work with energy rebate programs. This stuff is really about this. If I am a contractor and I would like to prove that I scientifically kick that guy's butt every day of the week, this is the only way to do it. I can say that I'm awesome, but we're going to talk about why that doesn't make any sense anymore. If you are a homeowner and you want to prove that you actually got what you paid for, this stuff is the only way to do it. So, when I built my house, I proved that every step along the way, even though I have never built a house before and I have no business building a house that is going to work as well as mine does, and mine, by the way, has been towed 7,000 miles at this point at 55 miles an hour, and essentially when you take a house on the road like that, it's gone through a hurricane and an earthquake at the same time every week of its life since April. Again, never built a house before. This is not rocket science. Any builder could do a better job than I did because I am an idiot. So, this house is insulated perfectly, and we were able to demonstrate that with our beautiful FLIR T660. And by the way, who has one of these in their pocket right now, or something like it? Good. I highly recommend that you get one, because being able to pull it out and tell the story of what this stuff means is half of your job. Really, all of us are technicians, and technique is incredibly important, and tools are incredibly important. And I think in that order, by the way, technique is way more important to me, in my opinion. The tools, you can't do it without the tools, though. And the storytelling is the other half, because we have, essentially, a marketing problem. That's the reason why. Who has tried working in homes, doing something called energy audits or whatever it is? Okay? Did anybody have a bad time trying to sell energy efficiency to people? All right, some of you are being honest. I certainly did. My company's name is Green Dream Group, as far as the IRS is concerned. And that whole green thing got me into a lot of trouble because, people they didn't know what we did. Are you sustainability consultants? I don't know. Now I've realized this is what I do. I use scientific testing tools to help people prove that they are better or worse than the standard that they were trying to hit. And this kind of storytelling is what we do on our YouTube channel. So the video that you saw is on our YouTube channel. We have over 200 videos there, and we're trying to really get this message of home performance and measured home performance out there. We have over 1 million views on the YouTube channel, and that's all great, but we really need everyone else to be doing this same thing because there are multiple conferences on infrared, there are multiple manufacturers of infrared cameras, and really we're all on the same team because there is no competition in buildings, and especially residential buildings, which is my specialty, until people actually know what it is that we do. And I know that people think that infrared is on television a lot, but I think that a lot of it is like for showing the military going in and doing operations and things like that. They don't know that, oh, you can use infrared in my house to show me the story of how my house is working or not working. That really works. This is the proof that my house is the most airtight house that most people have ever been into in their lives. Despite the fact that it's very small, and small actually punishes it. That number right there, you don't have to know what these numbers mean, but I'm just going to explain it to you. Blower door testing is what we're talking about. Everybody repeat after me. Blower door test. Good. If you say, oh, contractor, and by the way, all of you have homes. I know this for a fact. So if you have somebody who's going to be working on your house and air sealing it and insulating it, because you know that, air sealing and insulation are very important now that I've heard Corbett speak, you want to make sure that you say, I would like to have a blower door test and make sure that I know what my air changes per hour reduction is that you did for me. Because that contractor is going to get on the phone with his team and say, we need the A team out here because this person knows a lot. If I say, are you going to do that fan thing with the fan test? They're like, oh yeah, we're going to do that fan test. Because I get to do whatever I want now. You have no idea what you're talking about. We have to use the right words. And technique is not just important when we're using emissivity settings on our cameras. We have to use technique when we are dealing with language, when we speak about this stuff in public. So that number means, if you've run a blower door test, you'll know that that's a very low number. But that number means if I was to plug in a bath fan on my house and turn it on, normal bath fan off the shelf, I would be doing a blower door test on my house. And that is not good. You do not want to do a blower door test on your house every day. That's bad. I'm going to develop air quality problems, moisture problems, and I'm going to be wasting a ton of energy. That number right there is twice as tight, more than twice as tight, as the tightest restriction that any state is going to have on any builder in the United States of America, likely. And so people are complaining about having to air seal down to 3 air changes per hour with new houses. And again, total idiot, did it, and beat it by more than twice as tight. And that number right there is passive house airtight. Again, never done this before. Anyone can do this. It's not hard. And this is why we need to start talking about this, is because we have the system of thinking. So we have a 4-3-2-1 breakdown that I generally think about, because I'm an idiot, I'm in your attic, and I'm thinking about what it is that I'm trying to determine again, because I know that you explained your expectations and the problems that you're having. And by the way, every house is different, and every family is different, so you really want to use a customized approach for everybody. That's why, partly, these programs don't always succeed, is because they're trying to fit everybody through a one-size-fits-all program. There are 4 elements to home performance. There are 3 recommendations I'm going to make on any home in order to improve its performance. There are 2 systems involved in the performance successes or performance problems, and there's only one goal for doing all of this stuff. So when we talk about the 4 elements, the first element that most people are going to think of, if you ask a normal person what they think their house needs in order to be more comfortable or high performance or energy efficient, what would they say? Windows, insulation. Great. Those are the 2 big ones. The 2 things that I am never interested in talking about on my house, you just named, because those 2 are losers. More insulation is actually, does anybody know what you can grow in your attic if you add insulation without doing air sealing first? Mold. Thank you for saying that really quietly, because I know that it's a dirty secret. Yes, you can do horrible things to your house by doing good things to it, because the home is a... Exactly right. Okay, so windows and heat and insulation are both signs of heat flow. People know that heat flows into their house uncontrolled in the summertime and out of their house in the wintertime. And this is good that they know that. They don't get it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that during this keynote. Yesterday, if you were in my forensics class, then we talked a lot more about how all this stuff works. But heat flow is on their minds. Now, this thing is not even on their list because they don't know that it actually exists, unless they put their hand up to a register and they feel heat or cool coming out of it. In general, this is a very subtle thing that's going on in the house all the time. There's a subtle flow of air and pressure imbalances going on in the house, and the tuning of this is really important. If I thought that I was really sophisticated homeowner, and I know that I have some kind of an airflow or a pressure problem, who am I going to call to be able to tune this for me? The AC contractor. Or the heating contractor. Yes, that is the answer that almost everyone in the United States of America will give you. Here is the dark secret. Are HVAC contractors equipped with diagnostic tools or given diagnostic training to actually be able to pinpoint what the problem in a house is? Anyone? No, thank you for being quiet about that one too. I know it's embarrassing. This is part of the reason why I like working at a tiny company. My company is me, with my wife, and my baby, if you count her as an employee. I get to say pretty much whatever I want. And this is important stuff to talk about because we need to have uncomfortable conversations. I love HVAC guys. I train them all day long. A lot of them are my friends. But they are not given, generally, the training and the equipment to be able to do this kind of testing. So they are not the right person to call. And all the realtors that you know are going to refer their clients to these people. And by the way, remember that this thing that's in your pocket, let's all make a pledge right now. If you have one of these little kind of mobile devices, let's all, in April next year, when they have open houses, it's the big open house season, let's all go to as many open houses as we can that month. Just take like 2 a weekend. Just walk in, pull this out, and start looking at what is actually going on in that house. Will anyone follow you? Oh yes, they will be following you. And what will the realtor who's listing this property do? Freak. They are going to freak because they have no idea what it is that you're holding. And if you want people to be calling you to help them figure out what's going on before you come into their open house with this little device, and by the way, I'm recommending that homeowners buy these all day long because that's what's going to move this whole thing. The homeowner is the whole reason that anything gets done in the residential construction and home improvement industry. If the home buyers and homeowners ask for something, everything else changes. I am not really interested in talking to contractors and realtors and mortgage brokers about this stuff. Mostly what we're trying to do is focus in on the boss of all of us, who is the actual person who pays for this stuff. And that's where the conversation has not been taking place. Now, as we go up my list, it gets more important. What happens if you have too much moisture in your house? Mold. Rain. Mildew, rot, bugs, pests, dampness, funny smells, and all of that stuff is an ingredient and the most important thing on this list. Now, the reason that I do not call myself an energy efficiency expert is because energy efficiency is only half of this list, and it is the least important half of my list. I would never call what I do energy efficiency consulting because that limits the power that I have. You guys, and by the way, this condition monitoring tech that we're in for this keynote is exactly what I want you to keep doing in houses. In residential construction, we talk all day long in industrial and commercial about condition monitoring, and we want to make sure that the quality control is there. Quality control is really what we're doing, making sure that everything is good and done right, etc. And then we go into houses and multifamily buildings, and we completely change the conversation and start talking about energy efficiency. Why are we doing that? There is no reason. And what I'm here to tell you is that you guys are already experts in talking about quality control. Keep talking about quality control because that is the only thing that is going to move the residential market towards more measured performance testing. By the way, energy auditors, I used to put that on my business card. I'm going to tell you one thing real quick. The government is who gave you that name. Do not accept that name. That is not who you are because number one, it's not about energy. Number two, auditor. Has anyone been audited by the IRS? Okay, you raised your hand, sir. Was it fun? Whoa. All right, we'll have to share notes later. I hated it. I have been audited twice by the IRS, and I hate that. So I would never give myself that name because I don't want to make people feel like they hate me. An auditor is someone who comes in while you're in the middle of doing whatever you're doing and tells you, hey, you're doing things wrong. Here's what you need to do instead. Don't do that. Right? Help them with their problems. Now, when we make the 3 recommendations on any home, the first recommendation in home performance, always, always on every house, no matter whether it's new or old, is air sealing. Period. I don't care whether it complies with state code or whatever. Tight is a measure of performance. It's not a measure of, oh, every house should be 3 air changes or 5 air changes per hour if we use what the code says. The second thing is always insulation. Now, these 2 things, how expensive are they in the range of building components? They are not expensive. Anyone will tell you that, right? The third thing on this list is very expensive. And the first 2 things don't need to be done more than one time if you do them right, and they don't draw any energy to do their job. The third thing draws tons of energy and needs to be maintained and replaced. This is why when people run to the HVAC contractor, whose job is to look at it like this, and by the way, HVAC contractors, the reason they come to your house with their shirt untucked is because they don't have time to tuck in their shirt. Their life is that insane. So if they don't have time to tuck in their shirt, they absolutely do not have time to think straight and to take a breath before they do something surgically to your house. What's that? All right, there are 2 systems in every house. The first one is the enclosure, and that always wins every argument with the engines. The enclosure is made of the air sealing and insulation. You see a pattern now. And the engines are made of anything that moves heat or air around, and that includes hot water. So ducts and pipes and water heater and fireplace and kitchen exhaust hood and bath fans, etc. Now, these 2 things are all that I have to look at. in a house. I don't do electrical scans in homes because most of the time when somebody calls you, it's because of a problem that they're having with air quality and moisture or temperature differentials or some kind of a thing that they're feeling that they want to have fixed. So just fix their problem. Don't worry about giving them extra stuff. We can give them extra stuff later. Now, the one goal of all of this stuff, when we analyze the 4 elements, heat flow, airflow and pressure, moisture, and air quality, based on giving the 3 recommendations, air sealing, insulation, and HVAC upgrades, on our 2 systems, the enclosure and the engines, is not, as I repeat, energy efficiency. It is not saving the world, even though I do believe in that. It's not sustainability. It's not even comfort. And that's the big catchphrase now, like it's all about comfort. Comfort means different things to different people. And so if you try to define comfort, like, 70 degrees, 50% relative humidity. My wife is from Alabama, so she likes it to be 80 degrees and 70% relative humidity. So really, now I don't want to make every house 70, 50. What I want to give people is this. If you can deliver control to everyone, it's the same as delivering control over their gut, their output system on their body, right? If you don't have control over your digestive system, what could happen? Bad stuff. If you don't have control over your brake system, what could happen? Not good stuff. So sometimes people, like 20-year-old men who are in a fraternity, like to have a little bit of risk, like maybe I want to eat a bunch of pizza and drink a bunch of beer so that I don't know whether I'm going to throw up or not. Interesting. This is kind of a fun game to play. But most people, I find, actually do want more control over where they live and what it does. So this is what we can give people because this stuff is the way to think about it, and this equipment is the only way to prove that you have control over anything. Testing is not an aspect of high-performance building. We like to think that it's building science theory, and you go and listen to the building science theory presenter. And by the way, if you've heard of building science keynote, what generally, especially one famous guy, always gets up and says every year is, hey, remember all that stuff that I talked about last year? We found out that's all wrong. Here's the new stuff. And I don't have to do that ever because I don't care about building science theory. I care about what's actually going on with proof. And that's why proof is possible, and we need to teach normal people about this. So the testing is not an aspect, it's the whole thing. If you're not measuring stuff in buildings, you have no clue what's going on. And that goes for anybody who's been doing this for 40 years, 50 years, building houses. I know that we have a general contractor here who has been building for 40 years. We were talking yesterday, and he was saying, yeah, right, we had, you really have to come to this revelation where, wow, we've really got to start doing things a little differently and measuring what's going on. Now, this is the reason that anyone would care about this. Some people don't need this, and that's fine. We can leave them out of the conversation. Number one, you have a complex problem in your home, and you want it solved. You need home performance testing, and you need to find out what's going on now to pinpoint the cause of the problem, because, of course, I have a stomachache, take my appendix out, is not logical. That is not science. That's art or experimentation. What I want to know is, if I feel a draft, what is the cause of that draft? Because it's not the fact that air is coming in there and I need to weather seal that. So if you have a problem and you're a second-time homeowner or a homeowner for more than 3 years, then you know what a nightmare homeownership is, and you might be nodding your head at this point. Homeownership is sometimes a nightmare, and we need to recognize that and then be able to address the problem that I don't want to do it myself, then get my brother-in-law to do it, and then hire a cheap contractor, and then get an expensive contractor who knows what they're doing. If you are putting together a little pile of money and you want to improve your house, and by the way, this is a $130 billion industry in the United States of America, and this is aside from other countries that are in the room right now, we need to understand that every single home improvement process should involve some performance testing because you want to make sure that the stuff gets done right and that you're taking advantage of all the opportunities. And lastly, if you want to make sure you're not buying a lemon when you build or buy a house, you need performance testing. You will notice that there is nothing on here about energy efficiency because we don't need to talk about that. We need to play a different game, have a different conversation. Now, this is your question generally, and this is the question of all the builders and the HVAC contractors that I work with is, well, my client's not willing to pay for this stuff because they're not interested in energy efficiency. Yes, I do not disagree. You are exactly right. They are not interested in paying for energy efficiency. This is what they are interested in paying for. That's a Toyota. That's a Lexus. Same size, same color, same factory that they are built in a lot of the times. Why would anybody pay more money for the one on the right? And it's because of this. Now, what we are missing out on is this upscale ownership experience that constantly reminds you of luxury. when we go in, and generally people in my field come from weatherization, which is a low-income weatherization kind of a thing, and you've got a blower door that's got spray foam caked on it, and your stuff is all dirty and dusty. And then you take that stuff into a person's house that's like a really nice house, and you're trying to help them solve a problem, and they think like, ew, gross, this is all nasty, please put down a drop, throw, so that we can keep my house from being disgusting. What we really need to do is constantly remind people that we are amazing, and that's why I carry diagnostic tools with me, is because you want to just have that sex appeal. Being sexy in this field is very, very important. In all things, not just residential, but also in industrial and commercial, just embody that thing. Really play the part of the person who is there to save the day. You guys are all heroes, and you should act like it, and make sure that people know that you are what they want to be when they grow up. So, this is how we control the first thing on the list. Now, heat flow is one of the elements on our list. It's the least important one generally as far as I look at it, but it's very important to control all of them at the same time. Air sealing, insulation. Heat bleed is what happens when you tell the story a little bit better than heat flow. Now, the air sealing, you'll notice in my house, it has no spray foam in it or caulk that does any air sealing at all. And that's because I tow my house at 55 miles an hour down the road for 7,000 miles at this point, and it's going to be more and more. So what would have happened to all my spray foam or caulk if I had exposed my house to that? It would have cracked, and my house would not be as airtight today as it was when I got my certificate of occupancy. Now, we didn't have to deal with codes, but I did build my house to beat every code because I work with code inspectors, and I know also that when I say the construction and home improvement industry is the only one in the world that has no built-in quality control mechanism, a building inspector will agree with me when we start talking about how much they get paid and how overworked they are and whether they have the resources to actually do their job. We need everyone on this train to be helping to watch out for these problems that are happening. So we've got something like Tyvek. It's called Intello. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, but it's an interior membrane in my house. So I've got Tyvek-like material, which is called Solatex Mento on the outside, and I have a membrane on the inside. It's all taped, and then I've got the insulation, and insulation material does not matter. What matters is how it is installed. And the main ingredient in insulation being air, the worst way to install it is fast, and the way that everybody gets paid to install insulation is not by the hour, it's by the actual piece. So everyone installs insulation fast. This is an endemic problem across the entire building industry. When we control airflow and pressure, you'll notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vents between my house and outside. 210 square feet. How many vents does your house have? Right? This is very carefully crafted to make sure all of the contaminants in my house get outside. And by the way, that is a propane stove. What happens when I make tea or spaghetti on my propane stove? What else am I making? Carbon monoxide. Okay, so can I smell it? No, you can't. Can your detector save you from low-level carbon monoxide poisoning? No, it cannot. Your detector in your house and all of your clients' houses is stupid. It is a stupid piece of equipment that is regulated by a really stupid standard. It will go off if there's 70 parts per million for more than an hour, and it has to go off within 4 hours. And the reason that that is incredibly dumb is because what it says in the manual of a carbon monoxide detector, and don't take my word for it, go read it yourself. It says, warning, if you are elderly, sick, a child, or pregnant, this thing is not going to save you. You need something better. And that's what we have in our houses. And when people do carbon monoxide drives, that's what they're giving out, is these pieces of crap that don't actually protect you. Because what does low-level carbon monoxide poisoning look like? Sleepy. Anyone know the whole range of symptoms? It's called flu-like. When they describe carbon monoxide poisoning symptoms, they're called flu-like. Have you been to the doctor with flu-like symptoms? Anyone? Oh my gosh, you guys are so shy. One guy, thank you. You guys are all liars. You've all been to the doctor with flu-like symptoms. Okay, now if we had a room full of doctors, let's role play for a minute. You're all a room full of doctors. Anyone actual doctor in the room? Okay, good. So I'm in front of a room full of doctors. Would somebody grab that for me, please? And I say, hey, idiots, you have people come into your house or into your office with flu-like symptoms. Have you ever once recommended testing them for carbon monoxide poisoning before prescribing them a pill for flu? And you don't have to answer the question. That's one where I'm not asking for feedback because I know for a fact what the answer is. The answer is no. You have never had a doctor recommend that to you. And it's because doctors forget that their job is measuring stuff, not leaning on their 12 years of school. Our job is to measure stuff, and measuring stuff is incredibly important, and that is what makes you a hero. So We have an exhaust fan that goes outside, and then because my house is so incredibly airtight, I told you that that was the case, that damper down there opens up. As soon as that starts up, automatically it's on a mechanical motor, and it opens an 8-inch hole in my wall to relieve the pressure in my house and allow air to come up around my cooktop, contain all the gases, and I have proof that everything happens on top of my stove actually goes outside. And we use a candle for that. And again, you can watch all these videos on YouTube. When you control moisture, we have a rain screen outside. We have the Solitex Mentos taped at all the seams. I don't have eaves on my house, and that actually really helped me, even though I thought, ooh, maybe that's bad. I have a monolithic barrier around the entire outside of my house, and I'm terrible at roof trim, and so it doesn't matter that water gets underneath my roof. And then on the inside, the Intello is actually intelligent. This material will adapt itself, and it will change its vapor permeability by up to 100 times variability. That's pretty cool. So based on the temperature and relative humidity, it changes what it does with water vapor, because water vapor is like a teenager. You don't want to stop it from doing what it wants to do, because in that case, it's just going to find a way to screw with your life. So slow it down, control it. And air quality-wise, don't bring poisons into your house is number one. This plywood is all formaldehyde-free plywood. Did you know that all plywood, except for one brand, has formaldehyde in the glue? Did you know that building airtight houses is going to be state law in all 50 states within the next few years? Do we think that the fact that we're building subfloors out of plywood and the fact that all houses by law must be airtight based on the International Energy Conservation Code, we should maybe get people to notice this and then ask for the formaldehyde-free version for their subfloor or for their baby's furniture, right? My house has no formaldehyde in it. And if that's not enough, I also ventilate just in case there is toxin in there, because that's the other thing when you have a super airtight house, which is what makes my house so quiet, so comfortable, so air quality controlled. You also need the ventilation equipment, and mine is perfectly balanced pressure-wise. So you can open the door, and it's very easy to open the door. It doesn't go like that. And not only that, but I'm monitoring all the time. And the monitoring is part of that luxury experience. Every single time I open my door and I walk into my house, first thing that I see is my array of air quality monitors. I am monitoring radon, carbon monoxide at low levels, and that's called a defender. I'm monitoring particulates and carbon dioxide and formaldehyde and VOCs and temperature and relative humidity. And if any of that stuff goes wrong, I get a text message wherever I am. Isn't that amazing? So I'm constantly reminded when the sensor glows blue, ooh, my house is so awesome. Not once a month when I get my energy bill. Now this is what we're dealing with. Everyone says they're the best quality. If you ask all builders, how many of you are good builders? Let's play role play. How many of you builders are good builders? Raise your hand. Wow. This is a really sad turnout. I'm glad that there are some good builders here. All of you would be raising your hands in real life. And that's because everyone is in the business of marketing themselves. If you go on Facebook, everyone has the best life ever, right? Not really true. Now, there's telling the truth, there's telling lies, and there's telling bullshit. And by the way, this is a technical term for today's purposes. I am not swearing at you. To tell the truth or to tell lies, what do I have to know as a rule? The truth. I must know what the facts actually are. In order to bullshit you, what do I have to know? I don't gotta know nothing. So, what this means is that we need to teach normal people, and I am in the business of doing that this year with my nonprofit educational tour, that if someone cannot prove with quantified, measured results that they are actually, factually good and they do quality work, you must assume from now on that they are bullshitting you. I don't care if you are a builder who has been doing this for 60 years and you actually do good work. It's totally possible that if I'm bullshitting, I'm telling the truth. Statistically, it's likely I could be telling the truth. But the fact that you don't know for a fact means we all have to assume that it's bullshit. And this is what we need to teach everyone. So, the two things that we're trying to solve here are, number one, homeowner expectations so low. Number one, you're going to call 3 contractors for a bid, right, for competitive bids. Are they going to call you back within 24 hours? No. You're going to make an appointment with 2 of them. Are they going to show up on time? Probably not. They're going to say, I'm going to get you this bid by tonight. Is that actually going to happen? No. Right? One guy's going to get you a bid, and you're going to hire that one person. And this is everyone. And this is how sad it is that most of us are actually just terrible at doing business, which is really sad because that's the easiest thing is just to answer people's calls. My cell phone number is on my website. and I answer my phone, and I don't know most of the people who call me. And this is why I think that it's just something we need to do for other people. So homeowner expectations need to be raised, and we're going to talk about why that is about to happen. And the second thing is that professional consequences for doing bad work are also incredibly low. We're also going to talk about the solution for that. So this is my favorite restaurant in Chicago. That's my glass right there. I'm sitting at this counter watching these chefs cook. Now, the people who work in this kitchen are hot. They are working with sharp instruments. They are standing for long times and not taking as many pee breaks as they want to, probably. And they are being yelled at orders all night long. Does this sound like a construction site to anyone else? Okay, good. So let's just move forward with that supposition. Now, I walk into this business as a diner, and this is a nice restaurant where I'd want to take my wife for our anniversary. And we sit down, and I am served a plate that is late or cold or not what I ordered or has a hair in it. What do I expect to happen next? You take that back. Number two, what happens? They're going to replace it. Don't spit in it. Don't go to that restaurant. Who comes to your table? Manager. And what happens last? They give you a present of some kind. I absolutely lost money on that as a restaurant owner in the short term. But the reason I did it is because there's a very specific expectation set up. I walk into your restaurant, and I will pay exactly the price that is on your menu. I will not ask for a discount because that is incredibly rude. And I will tip your server. That's my part. You will cook food that is healthy, that is not going to poison me, that's going to be hot and delicious. And that's our deal, right? So all we have to do now is set up the client expectations. Say you do not ever have to deal with that kind of work in home improvements or construction ever again. That is not acceptable. And somebody like me is happy to say it because I don't care who I piss off. I used to be a piano player. I'm happy to change careers again if I get driven out of this one. But we need to have this conversation because the second thing is the consequences. Now, you're going to have people say, and I have people say this all the time, well, I understand that you think that you could have this building science wonderland where you control everything and it's all perfect, but this is a construction site. It's real life, and it's messy. Here's why that guy is bullshitting right now. Can we all agree that an airplane is as big as a house? Okay, good. 4, 3, 2, 1. Does an airplane put up with heat flow problems? 40 degrees below up there at 35,000 feet. Does it put up with airflow and pressure problems? Moisture problems? Air quality problems? Does it have to be air sealed, insulated, and have an HVAC system that's pretty awesome? It has the enclosure and the engines of heat and airflow, and also it's got the electrical system that if you look to your left and you look at all those gauges and dials and buttons and switches, what is the worst thing that can happen, consequence-wise, in that plane if the electrician accidentally crossed any two of those wires? 200 people die. And this is why the conversation is changing. These people who build these planes are no different than the people who build houses or do home improvements. We are all people. We're all idiots. We all make mistakes. It's okay. These guys find their mistakes. They are able to achieve control by using quality control checklists and performance testing before they roll that thing out on the line and give it to a pilot to take 200 people up in the air with. And that's the main difference. So this stuff is going to be shown to people. This is the television show that's going to be on next year. It's called Home Diagnosis. It's essentially This Old House meets CSI. And we're trying to show people how sexy it is to know for a fact what's going on. Now, metrics. Do people care about metrics? No, someone said. I beg to differ. Anyone know someone who has a Fitbit? Yes? What does that person always want to tell you? How many steps I took today? Are metrics important to people? Yes. How many people pay attention to sports? You liars. Yes, you pay attention to sports. Sports is all about stats. Yeah, you watch games, but if you do fantasy football, which is the next level up, all you use is stats. This many yards and this many whatever. I'm not a sports guy, but you get it. People totally care about metrics. All we have to do is tell them the secret that there are metrics for your house. Most expensive thing you ever buy and the thing that can kill your family. And I get an email from Google every week, a news alert, because I asked it to send me stories from the news of all the people whose houses killed them with carbon monoxide in the past week. And it pisses me off, and it's not acceptable. So we all need to have this conversation with people and get them to understand that just because they think that people who build houses must know what they're doing, and people who make carbon monoxide detectors must know what they're doing, and the doctor must know if I was carbon monoxide poisoned, he would know, right? all of that is not true because we are all idiots and we all make mistakes, and we are not talking about these mistakes right now because we want to look like we know everything. And being an idiot is very useful because if you look like you know everything, nobody really wants to talk about it with you. If you look like an idiot and you're like, hey, I make mistakes all the time, people are like, oh, cool. Can I ask you this dumb question? So remember that proof is what we're really all about, and you guys are all experts in this.